All right, everybody, welcome to the Work Hard, Play Hard podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Harding, and today I have with me SuAnne Hoffman. So, SuAnne Hoffman has been in the industry for a long time. She's one of those that when I first started, I was like, oh, wow, SuAnne, she's really good, wanted to get to know her and stuff like that. Anyhow, she's, how long have you been in the industry for?
Well, pushing 30 years, maybe
Okay.
32.
Yeah.
Something
So,
in that range.
a little bit of experience then.
Long enough to know better, and I
Yeah.
still love it.
Yeah, good. And so tell us about yourself. What got you into real estate? Why?
I don't know, really, thinking back. It just sort of happened in my life, and then I realized how much I loved it,
Okay.
right? And a lot of people love real estate because of the houses.
Sure, of
right?
course. Yeah.
I love real estate because of the strategy of it.
Okay.
Right,
Like
the marketing and the strategy is just, houses are lovely, and I love houses.
Yeah.
But that's 100% not why I love what we do.
Yeah.
It's all about the strategy and helping people, and chasing markets and up or down as we are experiencing.
Yeah.
And that change and that flow, I just really love.
Okay. Nice. And you're not just a realtor, but you're also an investor too, right?
Yeah, you know how it is.
Yeah.
Over the years, you just stumble into things and
Yeah.
say, why not?
Yeah.
Right? And in real estate, way back, I can tell you my goals when I was way back when. And being an investor was one of them.
Okay.
Because we have no passive income
Yeah.
or retirement or anything unless we make it.
Yeah.
And being self-employed, right?
Yeah, there's no pensions for
There's
us.
no, right,
Yeah.
so you have to make it happen. So I had a goal to own so many units. I probably should have made a higher goal, but it worked, and it just sort of worked, and I sort of bought units and then stayed pretty steady.
Yeah.
Haven't really kept investing. I know people just create these empires, and
Sure.
that wasn't really one of my goals.
Yeah, it was just enough to bring in passive income.
Yes.
Have that kind of return. Well, hey, I think that's great. That's actually what I've done too. It's kind of, I've had that same thought, like, oh, should I keep going? It's like, I'm kind of good. I don't know. So yeah, I'm with you. So you found obviously real estate to be, a good investment, something you enjoy doing and stuff like that. Talk to us about. Well, let's go right into the market, I guess, right now. Talk to us about kind of what's going on in the market. You've had 30 plus years of experience.
Yeah.
Is this unique? Have you seen this before? Or tell us what's different about it versus what's the same. Kind of your thoughts on the market.
Every cycle's a little different, right? They have appearances and resemblance in some way of other cycles. The unique thing about this one is it wasn't, even though you could see some organic thing happen in a marketplace coming, this one wasn't organic.
Yeah.
It was, dominoes were tipped over.
Yeah.
Basically the interest rates to stop inflation and the whole. So I feel like it, because of the outside force on the marketplace, the way I've described our industry and others that are money related, that this is the sacrificial lamb.
Sure.
To try and get inflation under control.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it could have been done very differently.
Sure. Yeah.
But Obama and Trump and Biden weren't calling me.
Yeah.
So
Which I wish they would have. Right?
I wish somebody would have called somebody, because I feel like this is pretty unnecessary.
Sure. Yeah. So what do you like? How long do we stay in this? This kind of environment.
Well, interesting that you ask. So I'm such a numbers head. When this started, now we're into it basically 2.5 years, pushing 2.5 years, when the interest rate first took that first big leap.
Yeah.
And then it happened again, and I thought, oh, this is really not good.
Yeah.
So I went back to 2008, and I tried to create equalization. And what had happened and what the fallout was and how long it took to recover.
Yeah.
So my prediction was, after doing all those numbers and seeing all this, because you have a decline, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a recovery. And remember, in 2008, people are like, prices will never come back to what they were.
Yeah.
And us would say, yes, they will, right? They always do, right? So everybody was confident that they, that have seen these cycles before, that yes, it would. Not only did they come back, but of course they exceeded those numbers, right, in a big way. So I went and I did the calculations from when this started, based on that, which is just pure speculation.
Sure.
Because it's just my opinion.
Yeah.
From when it started to get back to where we were when it started 2.5 years ago, in my prediction is 5 years.
Okay.
So we're only halfway through, the way I see it.
Okay. So we got some time still.
We got some time.
Yep.
Yeah, I've got clients and people ask, and I've got people that call and ask, what do you think, and when I tell them that, especially builders, that I'm associated with, they just about fall over, right? But now 2.5 years into it, now it's sort of like, oh, I can see it. I can see we might be into this another 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so let's talk about that some more, because I don't think whether it's exactly 5 years or
Right.
4 or 5 or 6 or but I think you're right. I think you're right on with some of these things. So what advice do you have for, let's start with, I guess you said builders. So what advice do you have for builders then? Hey, stop building, don't build as much. What do you do for builders?
Well, builders go through cycles too, and they pull in and they get really constricted, and they'll build, I'm making this up, but like one house at a time or 10 at a time, depending on the builder, right?
Yeah.
And then things start to break loose, and then they're like, they get so extended. I don't want to speak numbers that I don't really know, but let's just say as an example, some of the big builders were out there like with 1,000 units, right? Like literally, being built and or under contract, right? Well, after 2008, like we couldn't think that people would get that far out again, right? Because 2008 was rough on builders.
Oh yeah, it was.
And builders are like, never again, but then it's like the siren song, right?
Yeah.
And it just creeps in, and it's like, this is gonna last.
Money,
exactly.
Yeah.
So they just get out there and get out there and get out there. So a lot of the builders, what I've heard is they're taking their inventory, and they're trying to keep crews busy, that story, as long as they can, hoping it'll turn around, but eventually that's not gonna work. And then they're discounting prices to get rid of their inventory. We had that state loan assistance that tried to help absorb some of the inventory. And I've also been told from a couple of these builders that the ones that have really deep pockets and are super solvent, they just took their inventory in-house and they're renting them.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. They're now, and rental, how do I say this? Rental rates have gone down.
Yeah.
And I would attribute it to a lot of that inventory being flooded on the market.
Sure.
From these builders.
Interesting. Okay.
That's what I've been told.
Yeah.
And I have, I believe it. I have some pretty good sources on that.
Yeah.
So the builders are just trying to find that equilibrium where they can hang on.
Okay. And
every builder's so different.
Yeah.
You talk about the huge ones to the small companies, and they all have their cash flow issues and how far they're into a subdivision and how many units they have. They all have their individual financial story.
Yeah. Which I guess so talking, builders are just trying to hold on and stuff like that. Probably the same thing for realtors and stuff like that. Obviously, we had a big influx of realtors over the last several years because, hey, looks like an easy job. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make lots of money, right? And now all of a sudden, you're seeing a lot of them leave, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, I'm guessing same kind of thing where, who's going to stay, right? Who's going to be able to hang on?
Yes, and having gone through those cycles, as you know, right? Especially with real estate. So I have so many things to say about that because, I don't want to get myself in too much trouble. But I think that because of what we do for people, I would love to see on a state level. Not necessarily. There's no real barriers to entry to be a realtor.
Yeah.
Like what, $1,500, get a license, right?
Yeah, it's pretty
Join
easy.
a board,
Yeah.
you know, and that's okay, right? It's a free country. We should be able to start anywhere. But what I would love to see is, from that level, the state take. How do I say this? Take the level of education that we have to meet,
Yeah.
and sales higher and higher to stay in,
Okay, sure,
right?
sure.
For a multitude of reasons. But that being said, because we affect people financially so much.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, a lot of people get in and they sell 2, 3, 4 houses a year, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then the market changes, everybody gets out.
Yeah.
And we've seen this cycle. I mean, I've seen this cycle 3 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but I think all of our MLS dues and everything renewed like last November, December, and I think we had a full quarter of our realtors not renew at that time.
Wow.
It might have even been up to a third.
And that was just last year.
That was last year.
So this year,
Mhm.
possibly even
Yeah.
more.
So we'll know from that time, because people renew. We'll know, coming into the end of this year, people that just say, Uncle,
Yeah.
I'm
Well, no.
out
Yeah.
until the next wave, and then
Sure,
I'll be
sure.
back
And
in.
then they try to come back in. But
Yeah.
most people can only go so long without paychecks, right? I mean,
Yes.
I mean, unless you were super smart and squirreled it away and or have rental property,
Yes.
different things like that, right? I mean, ultimately, okay.
As a self-employed person in a commission-based industry
Yeah.
that has huge fluctuations, like building, real estate,
Yeah.
a lot of the trades associated with it,
Yeah.
even title companies, right?
Yeah.
Lenders. I mean, there's so much that filters off.
Yeah.
It's just, how do I say this? It doesn't take long to figure out that you need to squirrel money away
Yeah.
and live like you live,
Yeah.
whether good or bad times, because
Yeah.
there will be cycles.
I remember vividly when I first started this career, this another lender, he had, you could tell when he got paid because he bought this really nice truck and stuff like that, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, sure, and it, but you think that's life going to be all the time,
Yes.
and it wasn't, and he obviously got out after about 6 months because I started in 06 and then 07, 08,
Yeah.
So, yeah, but yes, no, you have to be smart with your money,
Yeah.
and obviously a lot of realtors probably haven't been, or maybe haven't made as much either, right? I mean, because there were so many realtors and stuff. But do you have any advice for realtors, I guess, that are trying to stay in the business right now and stuff?
So right now what we have is, and I'm sure you're fully feeling this, is what I have sort of, in my mind, I call it the locked-in effect,
Yeah.
right? Because of the interest rate.
Yeah.
It's estimated that like 82% of the Wasatch Front because the interest rates were down so low for so long.
Yeah.
Interest rates below, I can't remember exactly the number, but 4.5% or 4.2%.
Yeah.
So now we're at 7-ish.
Yeah.
Right? So people that want to move, we've got a huge demand, right? That people want to make a change.
Yeah.
My daughter calls and said, gosh, we'd love to move, but I've done the numbers. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
Right? But
Good
that's,
job.
exactly. But everybody does the numbers and they're like, okay, we're staying put.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So with all of that lack of movement, now we go as a real estate body to the people who need to move.
Sure.
Right? So then it's the, marriages, divorce,
Sure.
death,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. New job, I guess.
Jobs, right? And that's who, as a service provider to people,
Yeah.
that's who we need to find
Sure.
as real estate agents. And it's hard, right?
Of course.
Networking is hard, social media is hard,
Sure.
to find those people. So it becomes a challenge.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so I guess let's shift gears, I guess, to clients then. Those that are, let's say, they're not going through one of those things, but or let's say they are, I guess, but they they need a new house or something like that. But do they? I guess what advice do you have for people that are on the fence about selling? Your daughter, for example, is it, hey, just ride this out and wait a couple of years? Is there reason to do it now? I don't know. Advice for
it
for
is
those.
so individual.
Okay.
It is so individual. From the beginning of time for me, there's been so many times, even in good markets and shifting markets and ups and downs, sitting down at the kitchen table with somebody and doing their numbers, I feel like is pretty revealing.
Sure.
Sometimes people have a pretty good handle on it, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can do the numbers, and they don't look super promising, and people just say, I have to move. I don't care. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Need a bigger house or whatever.
Exactly. Sometimes people need to move for personal reasons, like special needs children, for
Sure.
example, or
Sure.
parents, things like that. And then the numbers just at that point don't matter as much. I mean, I guess numbers always matter, but as much. So it just is so individual.
What I've heard, you say 5 years and stuff like that. I've heard that, come 24, 25, because your daughter's a good example actually of people that probably want to, like in a normal housing market, they would move, right?
Yes.
But maybe right now they're not, and so I've heard that come that time when interest rates maybe do fall again, you're going to have a lot more inventory, right, on
Right.
the market, and a lot more buyers because you already still have this pent up demand. I mean, you have a
Yes.
lot of people.
Tons of pent-up
pre-approve
demand.
people all the time that that want to buy a house and they're barely making it to a first time home buyer because rates are so high, right? And so
Yeah.
it's just hard for them to buy. But what do you predict? I guess happening during that time. I guess in the next couple of years.
Well, it's hard because I feel like the media, right, will grab onto these things and then sort of explode it, right? There's going to be that magic moment that we've seen before where the prices come down about as far as they're going to, and interest rates start to drop, right? Where all of a sudden that intersection makes sense.
Sure.
And for those that are paying attention, that's the moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But not everybody looks at it every day or has a professional that can call them and say, hey, I think it's now.
Yeah.
Right? And they'll be smart. Sometimes people stumble into that moment. Sometimes they're watching and they choose. Sometimes they have somebody that's watching for them.
Yeah.
But that wave isn't going to start to really take off and build until it starts hitting the media again.
Sure.
And there's always a lag.
Yeah.
It takes a while. You and I, we're on the front end, so
Yeah.
we know. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden the media starts catching up, and we're
Yeah.
like, oh, it's over.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
because now they got a hold of it. And
Yeah.
everybody's. No, that's a good point. And I guess that's probably one of the benefits of having an expert, a professional in your court, right? Is because you're seeing things ahead of time, right? And so you
Yes.
can counsel with your people and say, hey, yeah, now's actually a really good time.
Yeah.
And it's not hit the news yet. It's not, because it does always lag, right? So, which is, and then after that, that's when you get all these new realtors coming into the field too, right?
Yes,
'Cause
and
they're
then the
like, "Oh,
whole
my-"
thing happens again.
Yeah, exactly. And then we're
Yeah.
back to.
Right now we have historically very low inventory.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Because we have about, in Utah County, we'll just pick a segment to look at. Utah County, we've got about 1,900 units
Okay.
on the market. That would include a lot of the units the builders have put on the market. So I feel like it's sort of swayed a little bit
Sure.
because we have some of these builders that have just put a lot of inventory on there.
Yeah.
So homes that are, just resale homes, fractional to that, which is really, really, really low. And typically right now we should have about, 2,800,
Okay.
right, in a normal market. So we're really low.
Yeah.
But most sellers, people are like, nobody's buying, so why would I put my house on the market?
Yeah.
I don't want to move because I can't really make this adjustment.
Yeah.
So there's just extremely low inventory for the segment of the people that need to buy.
Yeah.
There really isn't that much to choose from.
Yeah.
There really isn't.
Mostly new construction
Uh-huh.
with a little bit of homes that
a little straggler homes
Sure.
out there.
Sure.
And in that regard, one of the good strategies, if you will, would be to go to, how do I say this? Homes that have come off the market recently. Like if I had a buyer and they were looking for something specific, and I couldn't find it within this limited amount of inventory that we have, you get phone numbers or addresses of homes that were on the market that likely didn't sell and would want to sell,
Sure.
and just go knock on doors,
Sure.
right? Because they wanted to sell, they just didn't sell. So anyway, that's a pretty good strategy to find something that might not be there that is sort of a shadow
Sure.
type inventory.
Sure. Good. Yeah, that's good advice. What? Let's shift gears, away from the market and different things like that. I guess. Tell me about, just real estate in general. What's anything happening, anything changing in the industry? Whether that's technology-wise or, or is it kind of same old it's been, stuff like that? Or what kind of things do you see changing, with real estate, with realtors,
Nothing really. I think realtors right now are trying to get their feet, their legs under them.
Sure.
Just trying to figure out, okay, especially if they're new agents, how do I sell in a market that isn't good anymore,
Yeah.
right? Social media, of course,
Yeah.
is just really where it's at.
Sure.
And for those of us that have been in for a long time, speaking for myself, it's really hard.
Sure.
Because I just didn't grow up with it,
Yeah.
right? So social media, it's really where it's at.
Sure.
I mean, and getting out there and really networking. And I've got a daughter who's self-employed, and when things feel slow for her, I mean, I tell her all the time, go back to the basics.
Yeah.
Go back to the basics. Just network. Let everybody know who you are, what you are, And aside from, that, which is old school.
Yeah.
I wouldn't see anything new.
But and maybe that's where some of these, you say social media stuff like that. I mean, that is still a form of networking, I guess, or
Mm-hmm.
getting, like you're trying to meet new people and do that.
Yes.
So it is still old school, but just
With a new
blended
twist.
with new twist, right? Yeah, exactly. So, you mentioned the state and stuff like that. Do you see any kind of legal things coming on the horizon or anything with the state? I mean,
No. About I wouldn't even be able to speak to this too clearly, but in some states, when a house sells, they charge a sales tax, essentially,
okay, yeah,
right?
I have heard of that.
Selling in Utah, well, two things. Our property taxes are really low here,
Yeah.
right, by comparison. And the cost of selling, because although we do need title insurance and there's a cost there, and of course there's the brokerage fee, the real estate brokerage fees, attorneys aren't involved,
Yeah.
and we don't have any sales tax,
Yeah.
right? So the truth is, even though it is a lot, the political environment in the state of Utah has kept things so good
That's great.
for real estate to be able to change hands
Sure.
in a relatively inexpensive fashion.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, but if we get sales tax, I mean, they go after it about every 4 years, I want to say. I mean, that would be awful.
Yeah.
Right? You
Yeah.
can just imagine
Oh, sure.
the added expense on that. Oh.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, and that I guess again speaks to the level of our state and what they're doing, and
100%.
benefit of having a more conservative, government per se, right? As far as keeping taxes low and stuff,
Yes.
So, well, good. Well, talk to me about any cool stories that you've of people that you've met recently, as far as transactions you've had to deal with. Put you on the spot there. I guess,
No,
kind of
there's always cool stories. Trying to think of, one of the things that I think is just really important, because, especially in this environment, because when you're talking about the have-tos, right? When someone sells a house, if they're getting divorced or if it's an estate sale, people, if they haven't looked into the property tax ramifications, they should.
Sure.
right? That would be, so I that would be one thing that I would bring up all the time, because I just recently had a client, and it seemed to make sense to sell until we started looking at the just the federal income tax issue, and I was like, yeah, maybe you don't want to do that.
Yeah, there's a cost there.
There's a cost there. So that I had a really long conversation with a client that had been approached by someone to have them seller finance their house. And again, this is going back in the Wayback Machine. We haven't done seller finance or needed to for quite a while.
Yeah.
And it's very complicated, not advisable if you can avoid it, for a multitude of reasons. Way too complicated to get into a conversation about it. But when somebody sits down and really understands the front to back of that, my general advice is not advisable.
And that's for buyer or seller? Or
well, both, but primarily seller.
Okay.
The buyers end up, depending on how that whole loan and or purchase is structured, on the better end of the contractual deal.
Okay.
And the sellers get themselves in a lot of trouble, generally speaking.
So really, unless you have to, you from a seller's point of view, not so good.
Not so good. And if you feel like you have to and there's no other way, because we got this way, and before my time back in the 80s, interest rates were 12%, 15, 17%.
Sure.
And the only way to sell was, seller finance. So there's an application for it. I just don't think we're there if you don't have to. But get someone that really, really knows what they're doing, or you're going to end up in trouble.
Sure. Okay. Specifically about you, so for somebody listening that's like, okay, hey, I do need to list my home, or I'm looking to, to buy a home or something like that. Talk to us about you, and why would that person want to choose you, I guess, over, their uncle,
Well, a few reasons. I feel like my reach in terms of advertising, internet makes reaching out easier, right? It used to be much harder back in the day. That said, if people rely on the internet too much, they leave so many opportunities unturned. Because I feel like with any kind of internet sales, unless the reaction for the consumer is really fast, consumers are so flighty. I mean, they're going to be like, even with houses, they're going to be off to something else, right? That quick. So I feel like following up with that technology, right? With humanity, I don't know how else to say it, and having the skills to, one, chase it down, to answer questions and close and all the stuff that happens when you sell. And I think that combination is the winning combination.
Okay. No, I like that. Anything else that we haven't hit, or anything else that you wanted to bring up, I guess?
Anything else to bring up? I don't know.
And we covered a lot, so I think
it's just crazy times. I think right now the public, right, is pretty much resigned. People in the industry probably aren't quite as resigned, like the builders, right? The realtor, right? Sure. We're not quite as resigned.
Sure.
But I feel like the public is pretty much resigned to, okay, we're going to box up this whole real estate conversation and stick it on a shelf.
Sure. Come back to it in a couple of
years. We'll just come back to it, and I think that's good, right? Because there's no sense in spinning out on something that probably isn't going to happen.
Sure.
For individuals in some situations.
Yeah.
But how do I say this? For the public, be careful that you don't miss it.
Sure.
Because when it turns, as you well know, and it turns pretty quick.
Yeah.
And people then second guess. I could, when prices were going up, I can't tell you how many zillions of buyers said, well, prices are going up. We don't want to buy. Prices are going up. We
Sure.
want to wait till they come back down.
Sure.
And I can't tell you how many zillions of times I said, but interest rates will go up.
Yeah.
And even if prices come down and interest rates goes up, you gain nothing.
Yeah.
If you buy now, at least you get the appreciation. You get you get a lower interest rate over however period of time.
Yeah.
But even at that moment, now looking back, it seems so clear.
Yeah.
But at that time, people really held themselves back.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, you probably experienced it too. And they just didn't want to get off the fence and get off the, and now I have people to say, gosh, I should have.
Yeah. Of
Right.
course. Yeah.
And that would be my only advice is, when that starts to turn, in large part, I guess what I'm saying is don't be afraid.
Sure.
Get some really good advice.
Yeah.
Really good advice. And, take the plunge, because there's nothing better, even if there is a downturn, in the long run financially, than real estate.
Yeah.
It's been even better than stocks.
It has.
Right?
Oh,
It's solid.
Yeah.
So if you can get in the game, you just gotta get in the game and get home ownership. And it will catapult you financially.
So then I do have one other question for you then, I guess. Let's say I'm a first time home buyer. I make enough money to buy, $400,000 home, okay? Do I buy now or do I wait 2 years?
It's a really good question. And truthfully, so everybody's kicking the can down the road, right? People, the conversations now are buy down the interest rate, get in so you now have a little bit of affordability.
Yeah.
It's very much happening. But you're still kicking the can down the road.
Sure.
And you don't know if the interest rates are going to come down or not.
Yeah.
So unless you can see, in my opinion, your income going up, or a substantially good plan that if interest rates don't come down, you're going to be fine,
Sure.
right? Then I would say don't buy.
Okay.
But if you can get that buy down, right, which again is complicated for the public that, call a good lender, they can tell you what that is, or an agent. If you can get that interest rate down and get a little bit of affordability, right, and to get to where, how do I say, and know that if interest rates don't come down, you're going to be fine. And if they do come down, you can refinance. Yeah, get in the game.
Okay.
Because prices aren't going to go, I don't think, down substantially for two reasons. One, we have so much demand.
Yeah.
So much hidden demand. When this turns, it's going to be just like before. There's so much pent-up demand in this county, it's unbelievable. And two, even where we're at, our prices have come down, what, 10%-ish,
Yeah.
maybe 15. But from if you how do I say, if you look at that compared to how much interest rates have gone down, that's fractional.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're going to have this huge drop like
Yeah.
we did in 2008.
Sure.
I don't think it's going to happen like that.
Sure.
So, the answer to the question is, yeah, buy
Yeah.
if you can, if it's smart, if you can look at the big landscape.
So if you can afford it and stuff like
Yeah.
that, do buy, because
Yeah.
home prices aren't really going down anymore. I mean, it's kind of, which I
If
think
they do, it'll be fractional.
it'll be fractional. No, good. Well, I think you mentioned pent up demand. I mean, the other part of that equation is low supply, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't have a lot of homes for
Exactly.
sale, and so the ones that are selling, yeah, they're anyhow. Yes.
Yes.
No. Okay. No, that's good advice.
So I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, that makes perfect sense.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
No, that's perfect. Yeah. That's what I wanted. SuAnne, thanks for coming on.
no, thanks for having
yeah.
me. It was really fun.
Yeah, there's been good conversation. I think, again, the benefit of your experience is you've seen this, you kind of know what's going on, and I think you have some good points about, where the future's going, and whether we like it or not, yeah, I mean, it's probably still got a
Little
more
while. I
time.
hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, we would all love that,
I
right?
really
Yeah.
hope I'm wrong,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's just sort of how I'm looking at the world.
Okay. No, and I like the realistic. I like, and again, I think that's why you're a good realtor too. Is, you're not at that point. Maybe a realtor that's first starting, that's really hungry, needs to feed their family, stuff like that. Like I feel like you're in it. Like, hey, here's the reality. Here's what it is. Like, I'm gonna eat either way. I'll help you, and I'm an expert in this. but you know, I'm not commission hungry. You know what I mean? In the sense of like, I need you to live.
100%.
Right? I mean, you know, I think you're just an expert in this industry, and I think you have some good advice. So I'd like that. Thanks, SuAnne. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for listening. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.